Welcome to Awesome Movie Year, the podcast where we take a look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year. My name is Josh Bell, film critic and writer, and I am joined by my co-host.
I'm Jason Harris, filmmaker, comedian. And Josh, that's not how you introduce a podcast. You gotta beast it. Beast it, Josh. Beast it. Beast it. Beast it.
Okay. Are you done?
Beast it.
No, you're not done.
I was waiting for other people to join
That's
in.
not going to happen.
Beast it, Josh.
Beast it. See?
Beast
I don't
it.
think that isn't even really relevant to what we're talking about. I don't think that's what they do in this film, which is...
I mean, it's an entire scene in the film. What are you talking about?
Oh, man. See,
when she's pulling apart the crab and
yeah, right.
The dad gets
You're
up
right.
and it's like, no,
man,
no, hush puppy, beast
This
it.
is such a forgettable film that I already forgot about that scene.
Boo to you. This is a good movie.
What is this movie? Well, in this season of Awesome Movie Year, we are talking about the films of 2012, and we are here at the Sundance Film Festival Grand Jury Prize winner, and it's the film Beasts of the Southern Wild from director and co-writer Benh Zeitlin, or Zeitlin? Zeitlin, probably.
I think it's Zeitlin.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Beasts of the Southern Wild. So you give it some emphasis just because you didn't like it, Josh. Don't take the audience out of it.
No.
It's a wonderful film.
Many people agree with you that it's a wonderful film, and including, of course, the Sundance Film Festival, where it won that award, the Grand Jury Prize for Drama, as well as the Dramatic Excellence in Cinematography Award at Sundance. It was a huge film festival favorite in 2012. A bunch of festivals and awards, including the Camera d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival, which is the award for the best first feature. This is, of course, the directorial debut feature from Benh Zeitlin. And it went on to gross $23.3 million on its budget of $1.8 million, which is quite a good amount, I think, for a movie like this, that whether you like it or you don't like it is clearly not like a mainstream kind of film.
Yeah, I mean, it had all that buzz and everything. Josh, at Cannes, it also won the Fripreschi Prize, which we've talked about, which is given out from French critics to someone who is making a contribution to international cinema. It won the Ecumenical Jury Prize, which is the Catholic Jury Prize. And it won the Prix Regard Juin, which I don't know what that is to you.
I'm not sure. Yeah, it might be the award for like a youth performance of some kind. Is it Jeune? Jeun?
Jeune.
Yeah. That means young in French. So
well, she won a lot of awards. Quvenzhané Wallis. Also, Josh, Independent Spirit Award for Best Cinematography, Ben Richardson, who I think deserved it. The cinematography is amazing in here. And of course, Oscar nominations: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Actress for Quvenzhané Wallis, who was 9 at the time. The youngest Best Actress nominee, and at the same time, Josh, as we've talked about in more, the oldest Best Actress nominee ever in the same category.
Yeah, they were interesting competition there, and we did talk about that in our episode on Amore. And I think, do they both still hold that record? Did we talk about that? I can't remember now, but probably. Let's say it is.
I think so for Best Actress, maybe not for supporting.
Right, yeah.
But for Best Actress.
Yeah, some of the other categories I think have different record holders there, but for that one. So,
and just to put it out there, Argo won Best Picture, we know that, and that will be coming up this season. Ang Lee won Best Director for Life of Pi. Jennifer Lawrence won Best Actress for Silver Linings Playbook, and Argo won Best Adapted Screenplay.
All more deserving than this film, I think.
Man, this guy's just crushing it. Josh, here's one that I have a question for you. Because I thought that Dwight Henry was amazing in this movie. And he's the dad who yells beast it. And he did not get a nomination for an Oscar, but I thought he should have for supporting actor. Who would you take out, Josh? Christoph Waltz won for Django. We're leaving him in. Alan Arkin for Argo. Robert De Niro, Silver Linings Playbook. Philip Seymour Hoffman, The Master. And Tommy Lee Jones, Lincoln.
Well, obviously, I would not take out any of them because I didn't care for this movie particularly. And I mean, I suppose Dwight Henry was fine. I found the character kind of grating, but I honestly don't even remember Tommy Lee Jones in Lincoln. So maybe if I had to take one of those out, I would take him out. But I don't want to replace any of those people with this guy.
Dave, let's do the podcast without Josh.
I'm being very negative. I didn't hate this movie or anything, but this is a movie that, as a lot of the reviews mention, that whether they were positive or negative, I think this is one of those movies that, because of the life cycle of it, and this happens a lot, it premiered at Sundance at the beginning of the year, and it built this massive amount of acclaim and buzz, going all the way through these other film festivals, and then into its major release, and then into all these awards, is that it gets a backlash over time. And so by the time it had a wide release to general audiences, a lot of reviews mention that there was this backlash to this movie, or that it was a divisive movie. So, I mean, I think that was sort of the environment in which I saw it first, because of course I didn't get to see it until it was generally released here in Las Vegas, whenever that was, many, many months after Sundance. And so it's a movie that a lot of people had strong positive or negative reactions to.
Yeah, so we're actually dealing with that right now. Obviously, at the time of recording, Everything Everywhere All at Once just won Best Picture a few weeks ago, and there's a backlash against that. Some of it probably valid, some of it just pure racism, like your backlash against Beasts of the Southern Wild.
Well, some of the backlash against this movie might have accused the film itself of being, not, if not racist, maybe racially questionable. But I don't have any of that actually in reviews. Most critics still, despite that potential divisiveness or the backlash, most critics were very positive about this film. I mean, some extraordinarily positive, really. So Roger Ebert was one of those. He said, "You can make Beasts of the Southern Wild into an allegory of anything you want. It is far too detailed and specific to fit easily into general terms. The bathtub," which is where the film takes place, "is this place in this time, and how can it stand for anything else? This film is a remarkable creation, imagining a self-reliant community without the safety nets of the industrialized world. This movie is a fantasy in many ways, but the authenticity and directness of the untrained actors make it effortlessly convincing. Sometimes miraculous films come into being, made by people you've never heard of, starring unknown faces, blindsiding you with creative genius. Beasts of the Southern Wild is one of the year's best films."
And I agree with Roger Ebert, sir.
Well, you are in good company there, certainly.
Yeah, but what do we know? Critic for Las Vegas Weekly.
Yes, I did not agree with him then or now.
Josh, here's the point to me that stood out there is that authenticity. When I watched this movie, I'm like, man, Zeitlin must be a native of Louisiana, whether it's New Orleans or somewhere else. He must know this community incredibly well. And it is true that he moved to New Orleans, but he's a native New Yorker. And I thought, like, what an accomplishment to get such authenticity.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the criticism of this movie involved the idea of the non-authenticity, the idea that this was this sort of New York hipster guy who came to New Orleans and decided to use poor, displaced people from Hurricane Katrina as tools for his filmmaking. And I don't necessarily agree with that criticism, but that was something that some people felt about this film. I think he does, as much as it's possible for someone who's an outsider, capture the authenticity of community here. And he obviously made a big effort. He didn't bring in a bunch of New York actors or anything. He made a big effort to incorporate the actual community into his filmmaking. And I think that does come across.
Yeah, I mean, look, so let me first give you a quote from Dwight Henry about him being cast, and then I want to take on that point a little more. Henry said, "I was in Hurricane Katrina in neck-high water. I have an inside understanding for what this movie is about. I brought a passion to the part that an outside actor who had never seen a storm or been in a flood or faced losing everything could have had. Yeah, I was 2 years old when Hurricane Betsy hit New Orleans, and my parents had to put me up on the roof of the house. An outsider couldn't have brought that passion to the role that I did." So I agree with you. He's using people who have experienced it, who have done it, who have been there. But I also think anyone is allowed to tell any story. And if you kind of work hard and care about it, you can craft something that is authentic.
Yeah, I mean, and I think whether I like the movie or not, I'm not going to say that Benh Zeitlin didn't care about Hurricane Katrina, didn't care about the people of New Orleans. I mean, you wouldn't put in the effort involved in making this movie with no guarantee, obviously, that it's going to become the success that it did if you didn't care about the subject matter, about the place, and about the people. So my issues with the movie are not about that per se.
Well, not just this movie, as you know, his film "Glory at Sea," the short film that I think we all watched it for prepping for this, deals with a lot of the same issues. So there's a lot of kind of equity that he has into telling this story.
Right, and that preceded this. That's from, is it 2008, I believe?
Yeah.
And it's not the same plot as Beasts of the Southern Wild, but it's very, very similar in tone. And it has another young girl character who's the narrator of it, like Hush Puppy, Quvenzhané Wallis's character is in Beasts of the Southern Wild. And it has that sort of magical realist tone, dealing with the hurricane with these sort of fantastical elements as well.
Yeah, and the narration, it shares the character Sergeant Major, those kind of DIY boats to float down, which in Beasts of Southern Wild, I love the one where they kind of modified a pickup truck and used it as a boat to float down the water.
Yeah, these creations in this place, the bathtub where the characters all live, which is sort of a island, I guess, off the coast of New Orleans. All of their dwellings, their vehicles, everything that exists in this place is sort of cobbled together from detritus or whatever. And so I don't know how much of that was pre-existing and how much of that the filmmakers themselves built. But I mean, set design is another thing here that you have to say is quite impressive either way. Just the fact that they could use all of that stuff to create this fantastical world that seems completely alien.
Yeah, you feel like you're there,
Yes.
right? And you feel like you're watching something that is there. And right. I don't know if it's an island or a parish, but it is definitely surrounded by water there in some type of
Right. Well, I believe a piece of land surrounded entirely by water is called an island.
But I understand that. I'm just saying I don't know if it's completely surrounded or if it's just like a gully or a peninsula.
Right.
I don't know. Is what
I got the impression
maybe
that it was
could be an isthmus.
It could be. I got the impression that it was completely surrounded. That in order to get off that, get away from the bathtub, you had to go through the water no matter what. But yeah, it's not entirely. There's no detailed exposition in this movie. Certainly, that's not what this movie is about.
Do you want to explain what a fjord is to us now?
I don't, but we did just talk about Scandinavia, so got that going. Ty Burr in the Boston Globe was even more positive than Roger Ebert. He said, "Here is why some of us love the movies. They let you see with brand new eyes. Not all the time, and not even often. Usually the eyes are tired or cynical or cowed by the need to turn a profit. They let us see only what we're used to seeing in a film, not what it's possible to see. And it takes a very special sensibility to try to see something impossible. Beasts of the Southern Wild is that miracle, a movie that shows us an entire new continent unexpectedly close to home. I'm not sure how anything in this movie actually came to be, and I'm afraid that knowing would break the spell. I just know that Beasts of the Southern Wild is the first movie in a long time to feel like the first movie ever made."
Well, I don't know about all that, but feels like a movie made exactly of the time and place that it's from. And I think that's part of the relevance of it. I bust Dave's chops on piecing it together sometimes about him saying that he wants to go visit some of these places that are in the movies, which is a valid way to tour the world, so to speak. Dave, when watching this, did you want to go to the bathtub?
Oh, no.
Yeah, I agree. The bathtub seems like a horrible place that I would never want to visit. And I think that's one of my issues with the film, is that these people are meant to be like the sort of folk heroes. And I'm like, these are all idiots who are living in squalor when they have no reason to.
I don't know about that. I mean, they're poor, so how do you get out of that?
They're offered the chance to get out of it. I mean, even the shelter, as unpleasant as it could potentially be, it really doesn't seem that unpleasant, honestly. And anything is better than the bathtub.
I'm going to disagree. The shelter seemed very unpleasant. You could see it's cordoned off, and like you have this little space, I have this little space. No one's actually getting anything done that they're supposed to get done. I think there's nothing wrong with taking pride in your home, buddy.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with taking pride in your home, but when your home is uninhabitable and potentially deadly, then you leave your home. I'm sorry.
I think yes, that is an argument. If you are going to die there,
and that's what is the case for these people. Some of them do die. So I did want to get a negative perspective. So Michael Phillips in the Chicago.
Did you just quote yourself?
I could just quote myself because I did write a review of it, but I have not. I've been resisting that. I could have done that in like virtually every episode this season, and I have not. So I'm going to quote someone else. This is Michael Phillips in the Chicago Tribune. He said, "That look, the ambience, clearly is slaying a good percentage of those responding to Beasts of the Southern Wild. The filmmaker comes from a perspective of great empathy and considerable skill, but he's a pile driver as a dramatist. The film's screw-tightening methods are so overbearing. The story, the characters, the little girl's plight have to struggle to breathe or develop anything like an inner life. The movie is an eyeful. The cinematographer, Ben Richardson, is a serious comer. But even with the great, good efforts of Quvenzhané Wallis, the results, to some of us, betray a distrustworthy slickness reminiscent of a British petroleum oil spill cleanup commercial."
That's interesting. On the first day of shooting, I got this fact, Josh. The BP oil rig explosion happened outside of New Orleans, and Zeitlin and the crew had to kind of figure out how to shoot around that. So it literally did have something to do with an oil spill.
Right. Well, I mean, I imagine that that's probably why he mentions it, because it was something that was in the news at the time. And the idea that this is something that I got out of this movie, is that you watch it and you can say like, wow, this is so lyrical and poetic and beautiful. And yet, to me, almost every single thing that the characters say was utterly meaningless. It's like, it sounds beautiful, but it doesn't say anything.
I think that's just a lack of understanding of the culture, Josh.
Okay.
I got to take you on a trip to New Orleans.
Yeah. Well, I'm unlike Dave in that I never want to travel anywhere that is in movies or in life. So I probably will not end up in New Orleans anytime soon.
All right. Well, it's a great city it's full of passion and spirit, delicious food, and excellent music.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's wonderful. I'm sure it would be pleasant to travel to New Orleans, not to the bathtub though. But Jason, did you see this when it came out?
I didn't see it when it came out. I saw it shortly thereafter on whatever video platform it came out on.
Yeah, and did you like it at that time?
Yeah, and I think I like it just as much this time, so we're in a fight.
Yeah, I didn't like it. As I said, I think maybe I was part of this backlash that by the time I got to it, I mean, although this would be the case for you too, if you saw it later, it had already been so built up that I don't know, I found it a disappointment. And I thought maybe coming to it now with no longer in that circumstance, I might like it a little more, but I still just found it, honestly, like I didn't have the level of negativity that some of the people had as part of that backlash, but I just found it so dull. And like I said, talking about that scene that you were mentioning earlier, which I did remember once you started describing it, but otherwise nothing about this movie like sticks in my mind in any way. So hopefully I'll have some more things to say about it.
Yeah,
Dave,
because if you don't, then it's just me talking for an hour.
Yeah,
which I
know you can. You can maybe come up with some philosophical musings about the nature of storms or whatever.
Ooh, music.
Yeah, that's
good for
that's
podcast.
What's going on in this film. Lots of musings.
Yeah, it's true.
Dave, did you see this when it came out?
Yeah, not like right when it came out, but also like once it made its way to Vegas. But yeah, I feel like I have like a lot of the same problems with it that Josh does, but it's just all so pretty I still enjoyed the movie quite a bit. There's still a lot there to like about it. And I felt the same way back then as I do now.
Yeah. I mean, it is pretty. And like I said, I didn't want to discount, the set design or however they put that all together is quite impressive. The cinematography does look really good. That was shot, I think, is on 16 millimeter film. And it's one of those things where you think as you're watching it, like, oh, this must have been just some scrappy little troupe that had a 4-person crew and put this film together. But as we noted, it had a budget of nearly $2 million. It was developed at the Sundance Institute, and just watching the credits, there's a huge amount of people involved. So it was actually, is quite a large, it's not a blockbuster special effects action movie, but it's quite a large effort to put something like this together.
You're saying it didn't remind you of our 1953 Fear and Desire episode where Kubrick just kind of found workers to just help him out when they weren't in the fields.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of did remind me of that as I was watching it. And then afterwards, I realized that that's not the case at all, that it was a real large professional, decent scale production, which is totally is not a criticism or a positive either way. It was just a surprise to me.
Yeah, well, Josh, I can't wait till we come back in the next segment and you just crush 6-year-old Quvenzhané Wallis.
Yeah, well, we'll see how that goes. We'll come back and talk about our general thoughts on Beasts of the Southern Wild. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 2012, we are talking about Sundance Grand Jury Prize winner Beasts of the Southern Wild. And Jason, just before the break, said that I was going to tear apart little Quvenzhané Wallis, who was 6 years old, I think, is the time that they made this film. Yeah.
Auditioned when she was 5.
And was 9 by the time she was nominated for an Oscar. It's a long process there. But I as an actor, I think she clearly does what the movie is asking of her to do. So I don't know that she deserved to be nominated for an Oscar, but we've certainly seen movies with child actors that I found more irritating, I think.
I think she's charismatic. She has to carry a movie here, and there is that authenticity to her. I was reading that Zeitlin just liked the fact that in an audition they asked her to throw something at another actor, and she said she wouldn't do it because it was mean, and that all these things she could burp on command they put into the movie. I think you're seeing obviously the director kind of helps create the performance, but I think what you're seeing is a really good performance. I liked not just her, but like I said, I liked Dwight Henry. I liked that these people felt real to me.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, they're all non-professional actors. The rest of the cast as well. There aren't really any other distinctive characters with arcs or presences really, other than Hush Puppy, which is Quvenzhané Wallis's character, and her father, Wink, played by Dwight Henry. But they're all sort of local color. I feel like the other actors in this film are equivalent to the buildings and these ramshackle huts and things that we're talking about. It's all just sort of background in a way. They feel real, but they also don't feel like people to me.
I get what you're saying. I guess I like that local color enough where, even the names I wrote down: Miss Bathsheba, Walrus, Little Joe, John Baptiste, Peter T, Sergeant Major. I just liked how real that all felt to me.
Yeah, and we should say though that plot-wise, this movie is not realistic, which I think is part of maybe the tension that to me is frustrating, that the bathtub itself is presented in this sort of mythical way that as you start watching the movie, if you don't know that it's set outside New Orleans and it's a response to what happened in Hurricane Katrina, you might initially assume that this is, some kind of post-apocalypse sci-fi thing or some sort of fantasy world, a magical place or whatever. And as the movie goes on, you get that it's this allegory, and at least in one segment where they go to the FEMA, shelter or whatever. It's not even an allegory. It's just a direct story about what the kinds of things that happened during this. But there's all of these fantastical elements. The title, the beasts themselves, the aurochs or whatever, who are these like giant hog looking things that have been, I guess, sort of released from the melting ice caps, which we see in some stock footage. Is that what you feel like was going on there, Jason?
I just thought it was meant to showcase, that nature can both be kind and cruel. And it just kind of, their speed kind of ramped up as Wink was getting sicker. This idea of like they prey on sick animals and that the environment was sick. Personally, that was probably the least effective part of the movie for me. I didn't need any of that. Like, I'm not saying it was bad, but I just think like it was just there. Like I didn't need those little interludes of the running boar type creatures.
Right, whatever they are. And the payoff for them I think is pretty underwhelming. It looks cool. It's one of those scenes where this is still a low budget film, especially in terms of special effects, and you see Hush Puppy confronting these giant boar-like creatures, and it looks good. Like they put it together well. But after we spent the entire movie with these periodic cutaways to these beasts slowly making their way toward the bathtub, what happens when they get there is like nothing, and there's no payoff to it.
I agree with that. I see, Josh, I can criticize too.
Of course. And I can be positive too about this. Like, I mean, I didn't hate it. And I think it does have a lovely look. I think it's also just incredibly repetitive. Watching that short film, which is 25 minutes long, I thought, and is essentially the same tone and kind of plot as this film. I thought I can take this for 25 minutes and not be frustrated with the sort of elliptical meaninglessness of the dialogue and the narration and the very insistent music or whatever that wants you to feel something, and just kind of be swept up in it briefly, and then it's over. And then maybe when it's over after 25 minutes, I think, okay, I don't know, there wasn't anything to it, but it was kind of a nice experience. But to sit there for 90 minutes really felt tedious to me.
And I felt the opposite. I felt that this was more developed, had a better pacing and tone. Like I felt this was an upgrade from that, which is what you want in, going from short to feature. Josh, Ben Richardson really kicked ass here as the cinematographer.
Yeah, I mean, it does have a good look to it, and that's not one of the nominations that it got at the Oscars. I don't know if that's surprising or not per se, if he was considered to be in the running. But yeah, I mean, I would say those kind of technical aspects of it were more impressive to me than the narrative or the characters or the themes. And it just isn't enough for me to hold on to. Again, I feel like if this had been like a music video, if this had been some New Orleans jazz band or whatever, playing a cool song for 3 minutes with images of this, I would have thought, beautiful. I loved it. But to try and care about Hush Puppy and her awful dad and whether he's going to die. And like I said, I mean, maybe it's cruel of me, but to me, like the whole time I was just thinking these people are idiots and I don't care about the bathtub. And I just think they should all leave because, the idea of them, and this is the sort of potentially condescending aspect of it, is that they're treated almost like these noble savages, who have this more pure way of life. And it's like, no, they're just living in squalor for no reason. And I kind of didn't like these people, and I didn't want the bathtub to be saved or preserved.
I just think you're simplifying it too much. Like, what do you expect if they had gone to the FEMA tent and relocated? What is their future?
Well, it's not to say that they have like a wonderful future or whatever. It's a terrible situation with no good outcome, but I can't see how staying in the bathtub is the good outcome. I mean, the place has been ruined. It's been destroyed. It's sad that it's been destroyed, but you can't stay there anymore.
Right. The land is dead. They do have to move on from that at some point. I also want to say, I don't think that Wink was an awful father. There's clearly mental illness there that's not being treated, that maybe he doesn't even recognize. So it makes it a more complicated relationship than just saying he's a bad dad.
I mean, he can be both mentally ill and a bad dad.
He could be. I don't know if I agree with you on that.
Yeah. So. I mean, he's volatile. he's borderline abusive, and he's clearly having physical health problems, which he refuses to get treated. And if he's having mental health issues, he's not trying to become a better father to his daughter. He's not trying to address his own problems in order to take care of his daughter in a better way.
Yeah. It's interesting, Josh, because I feel like normally we would be in opposite positions. Like I would be dropping hammers on these people and you would be defending them. But here, Josh, you just have no sympathy for anyone. So, Dave, did you like this movie? You had to like the music. The music's great.
Oh, music's fantastic. And like I already said, it looks so beautiful. I mean, cinematography, production design, set design. But I agree about Wink. Like, I don't think he's a good father. And I think that that's my biggest problem with the movie is that it kind of presents these people as like these heroes for sticking with this situation. And yeah, it's a bad situation leaving too, but this is clearly a really, really bad situation already. And that's
Well, I guess
that's my problem, I guess.
I guess my question is, right, like, we know that Hush Puppy's mom is dead, right?
I thought she just left. Like
I thought she was dead.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's not entirely clear, but to me,
Okay.
I thought she like couldn't, maybe she was smart and she realized that living in the bathtub wasn't a good deal, but or perhaps that she wasn't equipped to be a parent and kind of abandoned the family.
It's possible that was the case. My point is we have no kind of hint that there is other family for them to go to. We know that Wink has basically spent his life there in the bathtub. That's what I think is implied. So like, I mean, here's a man probably in his 40s who spent his whole life there, who was just surviving, right? Like, I don't know what you expect for them to be like, yeah, I can pick up and I can move and I can do this. It doesn't seem like that's really in place for them.
Yeah, and I think that's why the whole magical realism like approach to this is the right thing to do, because clearly this director doesn't have an answer. Like nobody has an answer, so it's like, let's make something beautiful out of it, even though it's terrible all around.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the problem is that, Jason, is that you're not wrong about this situation from the perspective of the characters, but I think the duty of a filmmaker is to present it to the audience in a way that you can understand it, that you can empathize. And I never empathized with these characters, and that's the fault of Benh Zeitlin. That's not...
Yeah, I did though.
Yeah.
Now, Josh, we didn't mention the co-writer here, Lucy Alabar. This is based on a one-act play called Juicy and Delicious. And since then, she's gone on to write Troop Zero, which I enjoyed, but I don't really remember. Kind of similar in this like Southern pocket, very unique setting. And then she wrote Where the Crawdads Sing, which was a surprise hit. But I mean, obviously you have to talk about like, I felt like these characters, at least the lead two, were fleshed out in ways, and I wanted to see their story, but you feel like it was a fail for both.
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, they're fleshed out more than the other characters who, like I said, are basically not even people. They're just sort of like background noise or whatever. But no, I didn't care about them. I wonder I don't know how similar this is to the play. That's not something that we had access to, unlike Benh Zeitlin's previous short film. Given that the short film is so similar to this, and that's something that he just wrote on his own, I would have to imagine that the play maybe has been adapted more, that it's been changed more so that it's his style rather than his style adapted toward what's in the play, but I can't say for sure. Also, the fact that it's a one-act play means I'm sure it's shorter than 90 minutes, and that's probably the right amount of time to spend with these people.
I mean, again, I think, you're being a little over generalization there with that, because there have been plenty of short stories and one-act plays that have worked as feature films.
Right. And there absolutely have. I'm just saying that in this case, the material to me does not support a feature film.
I laughed when, after the flood, when Wink and Hush Puppy were out in their makeshift boat and they go to the bar, and I believe it's Walrus steps out of the bar and falls right into the flooded water. That was an amusing
Yes, that was an amusing shot. And again, one of those things where you have to think about, how did they set this all up? Did they deliberately like submerge this thing? Like it's something that looks very homemade, but if you think about it for more than a few minutes, clearly must have involved a huge amount of logistical effort. And like the fact that I'm thinking about that as I watch a movie is not good for the movie, like narratively, but is what I found interesting.
Well, and with that, maybe we should talk a little about the sequence where the kids escape from the FEMA school and end up first on like a trawler, and then end up on this like whorehouse barge, and that was an interesting sequence.
Yeah, it was. Although I feel like from the point that they end up going to the FEMA shelter, it really feels like that to me is where I'm like, man, they're really padding this out to make this a feature film. They've left the bathtub.
Fair.
You know, the bathtub is such a distinctive place. That's where we're immersed, or we should be immersed as an audience. And now we're in this like partially lit, warehouse kind of place. And then, right. So that weird, I don't know, was it just like a strip club or something? There's no nudity or anything.
I think it was a whorehouse.
Okay. Yeah, whatever it is, there's these sort of painted ladies, I guess, who are there. And Hush Puppy finds this woman who is not her mother, but she seems to sort of want to be like a surrogate mother of some kind.
Yeah, she's getting a source of love that she hasn't had, that she said, like, I could stay here or something like that, or whatever it is. She was clearly feeling that something was right before she had to, decided she had to go back and take care of her own, as she says. So I just want to say, Josh, the thing with the bathtub is like they were forced to leave, right? So like story-wise, I understand why that's important. I agree with you. I was more interested in the bathtub setting, but they were ripped from it and had to get back there. And I think that makes sense from a movie standpoint. So I think we're just on different pages here. If you want to rate this thing out of, five crab dinners, I'm down to do it.
Did that crab dinner, Jason, as a foodie, did that look appealing to you?
I mean, I'm not a fan of it that way, but just kind of, a lot of people say the best way is you just catch them and eat them fresh like that. And obviously in the bayou, that's a huge thing. So, but also I should say, not in my defense, in the opposite of my defense, I have a very hard time opening crab when I eat them anyway. So I'm not right for that.
Yeah, well,
I couldn't beast it or do it the other way.
I was just wondering, because to me it looked like disgusting. And I wasn't sure if it was meant to be sort of grotesque. And, and I'm someone who, is extremely picky with food. So sometimes I look at gourmet food and I think that would make me gag, but people love it. So I just wasn't sure how I should have taken that scene.
No, I think that's just a lack of knowledge. And I'm not insulting you, just in that area. Like people love, to go out, catch crab, eat them, crawfish, whatever, however it is, you can eat them all fresh like that.
Yeah. All right. Well, you can.
I mean, I'm sure they were boiled or whatever.
One would hope, at least in reality, if not in the context of the narrative.
Crab boil, baby. So.
All right. So 5 crab dinners, Jason. How do you rate this?
I give it 3.5, and I'm going to continue to fight the good fight against you on this one.
All right. Well, I'm going to give it 2.5. Like I said, I didn't hate it, even though I've been really down on it. I feel like it's a visually distinctive boar. So it's got something going for it. So.
Boar, B-O-A-R.
Oh, yeah. It's a boar full of boars is what it is. Dave, how would you rate this?
I'm going 3.5. And there's plenty to like here, even if I had some issues with it.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. We'll come back in a moment and talk about the legacy of Beasts of the Southern Wild. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 2012, we have been talking about the Sundance Grand Jury Prize winner, Beasts of the Southern Wild. And to me, what was interesting about this legacy-wise, for a movie that was such a huge sensation at all these festivals, was nominated for 4 Oscars, which I forgot that it had been so heavily awarded. I feel like the main legacy of this movie, whether people liked it or not, is that no one remembers it anymore. This is the legacy of this movie is nothing, I feel like.
I think you're being too hard on it. I remembered it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess and I'm not saying that as a qualitative judgment of the movie even. I just feel like a movie that was this heavily awarded and acclaimed should have had more of a cultural impact.
Well, look at some of the Sundance winners we've covered in the past that we had to dig up, right? Like maybe that's just the trend of some of these winners.
Well, yeah, that's true for movies that win at Sundance and then don't go on to do anything. But that's not what happened here. This movie, again, I feel like any movie that's nominated for Best Picture and 3 other Oscars should have a bigger cultural footprint than this film.
Do you think part of that is Zeitlin has only done one movie since, which was Wendy, which is, again, playing with similar themes here, but in a much less effective way. Did either of you guys watch that?
I didn't. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, it's a real come down off of this one, but it's, kids, magic realism, unique setting. It's a retelling of Peter Pan, and I don't think it's nearly as effective. Though Scarlet.
Well, that's good.
So, and we don't see anything else that he's got in development, and it's interesting because this is a piece that definitely has a vision from a director, right? And you're kind of like, you think like there might be more coming, but do you think part of the reason that, as you say, it's forgotten is that we haven't seen more from Zeitlin and we don't know when we will?
Yeah, I think so. And I don't know why it is. It was 8 years later that he made that film. So it wasn't even like a quick follow-up that people thought, oh, he was so great and now we're disappointed with his next thing that he did right away. It took him all that time, and I don't know why that is. I mean, I would have to think that if you make a movie that's this successful, that there are offers and opportunities that come in to make other films. And I don't know if maybe he was just such a purist that he only wanted to make a film with his particular vision, and maybe that wasn't what he was being offered the chance to do. I don't know why it took him that long to make that other movie. But yeah, totally. I think you're absolutely right, is that it was such a distinctive kind of film that I'm sure people who love this movie would have been excited to see more from him. And by the time he got around to it, maybe they had moved on.
I'm just, he did so much. Like we talked about him and Romer doing the music together. So I thought, oh, maybe he's doing music, but I couldn't find anything on that. Like, his company is called Court 13, and it's this like loose association of filmmakers. So you thought, oh, okay, maybe they're like building this indie empire, but I don't really see anything on him anywhere at this point in time.
Yeah, I don't know what he's been doing. I mean, I assume he makes a living some way. I can't imagine that the Beasts of the Southern Wild money is sustaining him still at this point. So I don't know.
I mean, maybe he's teaching his parents. I think we're both like artist academics, and I don't know either. I will say Dan Romer did the music for Station 11, which I thought was really awesome and kind of fits in with this tone. And also he, as we keep talking about on the show, Extrapolations, now on Apple TV. He did the music there as well.
And I feel like Station 11, and I know, Jason, you've watched all of it and I haven't yet, but I've liked what I've watched, is the kind of thing where it seems like the sort of project that someone like this could have gone on to, right? Where it's a more polished, mainstream kind of story, but it deals with the magical realism and similar kinds of themes about displacement and disaster. And I don't know why Benh Zeitlin never got the chance or agreed to, a larger kind of project like that.
I don't either. He would have been great for that. I think you're right. But that was a great project anyway. So Ben Richardson has gone on to do some cool things. Wind River, Mayor of Easttown, and as a DP, and I believe he's like DP directing all these Yellowstone spinoffs now.
I mean, that's pretty good. Yeah. And certainly like, that's what you expect. Something like this that gets such acclaim that it allows those people opportunities. Quvenzhané Wallis, of course, was the real breakout of this, getting that Oscar nomination. And she did have some pretty big roles as a child star. The main one being as the title character in the remake of Annie, which is not good. I do not recommend.
I have not seen that, but she did get a Golden Globe nomination.
Whatever, Golden Globes. And she's continued to work. I mean, she's only, I think, maybe like 19 or something like now. So she's still pretty young, but has gone on to more adult roles. She's a regular on the Apple TV Plus show Swagger, which I have not watched. And she was on American Horror Stories recently. So she's continuing her career. I feel like she's the one here who's managed to have a more sustained career.
She also has released multiple children's books, and she's in the upcoming project Breathe, which is another one of these kind of apocalyptic hellscape movies. Air supply is scarce in the near future, forcing a mother and daughter to fight to survive when two strangers arrive, desperate for an oxygenated haven.
Yeah, I can't imagine why there's so many apocalyptic narratives being made right now. What could that be about?
It's so wild, especially environmental apocalypses, Josh. Both she and Dwight Henry appeared in 12 Years a Slave. Dwight Henry owns the Buttermilk Drop Bakery and Cafe in New Orleans and is supposed to play Marvin Gaye Sr. in Sexual Healing, the Marvin Gaye story.
Yeah, and he has a handful of credits as an actor, but clearly is mainly interested in his, bakery, which good for him.
Yeah, that's
right.
cool.
And I think most of these people, they're not, the other people in this film, they weren't trying to pursue acting careers or whatever. It's not like it was just kind of a cool thing to do, to appear in a film and then went back to whatever their regular lives were.
Yeah, I will say Levy Easterly, who I believe played Walrus in this one, was also in Wendy. I was trying to look for the actors who were in both, where he played basically the Captain Hook character.
Oh yeah, there you go. Jason, you talked about Lucy Alabar, the co-writer whose play this was based on. She's continued to write plays and novels, and did write the screenplay for Troop Zero, which was based on one of her stage plays. And I thought you would like that movie, Jason. Is it not great?
I did like it. I just, at this point, I mean, that was like one of those pandemic movies about like a little Girl Scout troop, I believe, or a Girl Scout troop who's like maybe not as financially well off as some of the other troops around. And I liked it. I just don't really remember it.
Yeah. Well, something that's forgettable seems to be her MO.
Big hit when the Crawdads
this past year. Dave, didn't you see that?
I did. Yeah. It's all right.
Nobody liked that, but it was a huge hit.
So somebody liked it. No critics or film geeks liked it, but the people liked it, Jason. The people.
Yes.
Power to the people, Josh, whether in the bathtub, New Orleans, or elsewhere.
Totally. So, anything else on the legacy of this film you want to talk about?
I mean, the fact that you didn't like it is a delight to me. So let's move on with our lives,
right.
Josh.
Well, I'm glad that I've delighted you then. That is Beasts of the Southern Wild. And that's this episode of Awesome Movie Year. You can find us online and on social media.
Yeah, come and beast us online, guys. No, don't do that. We're at awesomemovieyear.com. It's Awesome Movie Year on Facebook and Instagram, Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter. And I'm Jason Harris Comedy, or J Harris Comedy on all the things. You can check out my new website, eatthiscomedy.com. My old website, Go for Jason, is lost and boars are eating it, maybe. I don't know. But I am Go for Jason on Letterboxd, so that's a thing, Josh.
That is a thing. My website also kind of lost, joshbellhateseverything.com. I am at Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook and at Signal Bleed on Twitter and on Letterboxd. And you can listen to our producer, David Rosen's awesome podcast, Piecing It Together.
Check out Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts, and follow us on social media at Piecing Pod.
And Jason, what is in our next episode?
Josh, are we doing Best Picture next?
We are.
Well, I've already mentioned it, Josh. It's Argo. Ben Affleck coming back. Our second episode on a Ben Affleck directed film.
Yeah, Ben Affleck joining a rarefied collection of filmmakers here on Awesome Movie Year. So tune in next time for Argo, and thanks for listening to Awesome Movie Year.
Thank you for listening to Awesome Movie Year. Make sure to follow Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter, and at Awesome Movie Year on Instagram. And if you like the show, review us and rate us with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.